I really just wanted to make something that could appeal to everybody. I'm really sick of, the divisiveness and the tribalism. I just wanted to try to get to some truth, something that we could all agree on. So Margaret is just very much about like speaking your truth, standing up for what you believe, and not, not everybody's going to feel the same things, but it's about like decency and like speaking out against corruption and bravery, right? Like really being brave enough to just stand up and speak out when you see an injustice.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Film Goals Podcast. Today, I'm with the one and only Danny Chandia.
Hello.
From Desert Cactus Films. So thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, you've been doing a lot of stuff recently that's, it's been all over social media, and you just had like a mixer where you guys, you and your partner, kind of showcased your work and everything. So that was really cool to see, like everything that you've done and your progress. But so I'm glad to have you here. It's like the right time. So yeah, let's start. I like to start a podcast with like the beginning of the journey. Like, how did you start? How did you get into filmmaking? What influenced you? What did you like about it?
Well, I've wanted to do this pretty much my whole life. When I was a kid, my first love was like drawing. I used to spend hours just kind of like making these little adventure comics and kind of learning how to draw like Marvel superheroes. I had like this little how to draw book. And I got diagnosed with ADHD when I was in first grade. So that was kind of the thing that I could really gravitate towards, that I could focus in on, as opposed to like, making friends. I really just kind of like became very insular, and I spent a lot of time drawing and making art. And then when I was 8, we got a home video camera, and I started playing with that and experimenting, making like stop motion short films and things like that. That did sort of start to get me outside. The kids in the neighborhood would want me to film like their skate videos or, whatever kind of silly stuff they were trying to do. And so then I became kind of the guy behind the camera. And in high school, I was lucky enough to go to LVA. I actually auditioned to do art. So all of those years of just kind of like hyper focusing on drawing kind of paid off. And then when I was there, they actually introduced a broadcast journalism major, which was not quite film, but it, allowed me to run around with a camera, which is what I really wanted. And and then just after high school, I did like a semester at CSN and ended up stopping that. I got to that point where it was, you'd go in and watch a movie, and then you'd have to go home and write an essay about it. And I just thought, man, I'm doing that all the time anyway, without having to write something to prove that I, learned something from it. And school just wasn't for me. I do much better just with hands-on learning. So basically right out of high school, I started working. My first job actually was my senior year. I did in studio camera operating for PBS, the local PBS station. And it was funny. I actually took summer school before my senior year to try to get math out of the way, because I hated math and I sucked at it. And ironically, that free period that I had opened up my senior year to like leave school early to go to work, I'd go to work and they had me filming Homework Hotline, which is literally just, kids calling in for help with their math homework. So you'd have to stand. It was even worse than doing math homework. You actually just had to stand behind a camera and try not to fall asleep while somebody else was doing it. So then that ended up getting me a job after high school at Channel 3. I did like in-studio camera operating and floor directing over there for the morning news, waking up with the Wagners. And then at the same time, I was also working at Thomas & Mack. And I started out there just being a grip, like the guy behind the cameraman on the court, and try not to trip the cheerleaders during the basketball games. But one day I got the opportunity to like carry a camera and go around the arena during a game, and I got a bunch of footage of like the fans, and I got footage of the Rebel Girls, and I got some cool shots of like the team, and they just wanted B-roll, but I took the footage home and I actually cut it together, and I brought it back in, and I must have kind of scared the editor who was already there, because he actually left not long after that. And I got promoted and started doing like their in-house video. And that's actually where I learned After Effects. You know, the tools that I use for Margaret is all After Effects.
So tell me about your style. So the way that you I saw like your music videos from like your screening at Spacecraft, and you have like the film look and like the weird like animation, shaky animation. So how did you come up with that?
Yeah, well, originally that was kind of just out of necessity. Our music video, Violent Water, that we did in 2019, we did it on $1,000 budget, and so time was limited. And, you know, I was just doing all the VFX compositing myself. So I kind of just added all these scratches and this, you know, grainy look to cover up some of the rough edges of the VFX. Like if you go through it frame by frame, there's like noticeable issues with like how people are cut out. You'll see like fingers disappear or like edges that are not stable or consistent. But, you know, I think it kind of works anyway, because it gives it more of like a film process kind of look. Mm-hmm. But yeah, then I kind of took that and used it on Margaret the Brave. Originally, Margaret was going to be a lot more like a silent film, the style of the fairy tale. But as it went on, I just kind of steered more and more away from that and became a little bit more confident with just letting the image be. Let it be cleaner. Let it just be, you know... let the audience just appreciate the composition of each shot rather than trying to cover it up with, you know, too many filters. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
So how did you the VFX stuff, like, is that like your main, like what would you consider your main thing, like that you do now? I know like filmmaker, but it's like so many hats. Yeah,
well, I mean, I definitely say like VFX are probably my biggest strength. It also helps to be your own editor. Margaret was an attempt to sort of move away from that a little bit more. You know, Violent Water was all VFX, and it was a music video, so it only showed alongside other music videos when it went to festivals, and that kind of got us, you know, interested in making something that was narrative so that we could screen with short films, and to prove that we could tell a normal sort of straightforward story with, you know, live action characters and real locations. So it was sort of the perfect way to mix those two things. Was like, let's take the what do we call it? The couch narrative. Oh, what the hell do you call it? I'm spacing. Anyway, but taking like essentially the structure of The Princess Bride, right? Where you start in the real world and then you go into the fairy tale, and you can just kind of treat the fairy tale as this surreal thing. And I, you know, I'm of the opinion that realism is overrated. You can really get an audience to buy into something if you just treat it, you know, as if it's, you know, that is how the fairy tale looks. This is just the world of it. It is like a pop-up book that came to life. So yeah, we mentioned Margaret. Might as well get into it. Yeah. Tell me, like, what is Margaret the Brave, and kind of like what went into that, and what the story's about. Yeah. Well, I wrote Margaret in late 2019. And I guess it was just sort of, it was therapy for me. I mean, I was writing something that could speak to the uneasiness that I think we were all feeling at the time, especially, you know, ever since 2016. We don't need to name names, but, you know, the last 8-9 years or so have been very volatile and very touchy in this country, and I really just wanted to make something that could appeal to everybody. I'm really sick of, you know, the divisiveness and the tribalism. I just wanted to try to get to some truth, something that we could all agree on. So Margaret is just very much about like speaking your truth, you know, standing up for what you believe, and not, you know, not everybody's gonna feel the same things, but it's about like decency and like speaking out against corruption and bravery, right? Like really being brave enough to just stand up and speak out when you see an injustice, you know? So, yeah, that was sort of my thinking going into it. And it was about optimism, right? Like, not everything is shit, guys. Let's be positive here. And, you know, ironically, as soon as I finish writing the thing and then we shoot the stuff with the dad and the daughter, then COVID happens. And there's just like this double whammy of like bad stuff happening in the world that just sort of felt like, I mean, at first it felt like, I'm really dumb and I'm really naive for writing this thing that is so optimistic and hopeful. But, you know, over the course of the pandemic, I sort of realized what it was. It was like a test. It was like, I have to see this through. If I really believe that there is cause for optimism, then like prove it, like finish this thing, see it through to the end and get your message out there.
So did you, so you wrote it in 2019 and then you shot some of it before the pandemic?
Yeah, luckily. All the stuff with Roberto and Veronica, we shot actually at my grandma's house in late February, early March of 2020. Literally 10 days after we finished there, that's when the lockdown started.
Right.
It actually worked out perfectly. My grandma was in a home by that point, and they were going to sell the house. And I'd actually heard that quite a while before we started location scouting. And I don't know why it didn't click right away, but eventually after enough headaches of like looking for a house to shoot in, it just, you know, it clicked and it made sense. And it was like, oh, well, we have to shoot there. And it's more personal and we'd have more control. And my aunt was like the location manager. So it all really worked well. But yeah, I mean, the timing could not have been more
fortunate. So did you pick up the green screen stuff? Like, how long did you wait till?
Then we started doing, then we started doing green screen stuff in October of 2020, fully masked. And it was okay because the green screen stuff didn't require as many people to be crammed into a small space. You know, we were shooting at LifeForge, which is a decent sized green screen, not big enough to do like the giant crowd scenes that you see in the film, but my skill with, you know, compositing is that, you know, you can take a group of 2 or 3 or 4 people and get multiple takes of them and then just copy paste or just get 20 takes of your different villagers or your different guards or soldiers or whatever, and then you build the army or the mob or the group, anything out of that, and you just layer all of those things together. So it worked out. Like, we were able to be COVID compliant and shoot, you know, with very small numbers of people, and then in post just add them all up.
Big. Man, I'm excited to see it. I haven't seen it yet. So yeah. Speaking of that stuff, like, you pretty much brought the whole community, like the filmmaking community in Vegas together, because it's like everyone's in that movie pretty much, it seems like.
Thank you.
What was like how did that happen? And did you just need that many people, or was it like?
Yeah, well, and you know, we weren't going to be precious with like to me it felt like what it must have been like for George Méliès back in the early days of film, when it was just people getting together to play make-believe. And it wasn't necessarily all professional actors. It wasn't this refined sort of production-heavy art form yet. It was getting all the people in your neighborhood together, putting on costumes and standing in front of some painted backdrops and you know, pretending that you're mermaids or you're knights or whatever. And so I don't know, to me it felt like getting back to the roots of cinema, not to sound pretentious, but it really felt like that. It felt like, wow, this must be the core, you know, the essential reason for doing this is to play. So yeah.
What was the challenges in like trying to get all those people together?
I mean, Rachel's incredible with being able to coordinate that kind of stuff. I am not very good with communication, texting, emailing, all of that stuff. Just even thinking about it gives me anxiety. So we make a good team in that sense. Like, she can really handle that side of it, and she can make a mean spreadsheet and an amazing, you know, schedule. So you'd really have to ask her, like, how did she balance all of that? Because in total, there's over like 300 people in the cast and crew.
That's crazy.
So yeah.
So what were some of your challenges getting the film done? Because I know you. So I think you mentioned at the mixer, like, it took you 30 days. In 2 years or in a
30
year?
shooting days, yeah.
In a year or 2 years?
Over the course of 5 years.
Oh, 5 years.
Yeah. And I don't know if that includes some of the miniatures, you know.
So yeah, tell me like what went into that? Because 30 days in 5 years is a long time.
Yeah. Well, I would say our biggest shoot was this 9-day shoot that we did in 2021 in July. And that's when we shot all of our royal court members and a lot of our guards. Basically, that was the shoot where we finished up Margaret's storyline, some of her stuff that we couldn't take care of in the first 6 days of green screen stuff. And then all of the groups, all of the big group stuff. And literally, we just had people coming in on like a rotation. They'd be in for, I mean, it was amazing how streamlined we got it by the end. People would come in and they'd be out like 45 minutes, an hour later. They'd be going into makeup as soon as they got in, which is not typical. Like, very proud to say that we organized that really well. Sorry, your question was,
what was the challenges for you? And then like, what was like the things that you did in those 30 days? So you did the green screen stuff, and then what else went into it?
So like for the Great Hall scene, Margaret has to fight a bunch of guards, and like in the first 6 days of the green screen shoot, we shot her and Lance and the Our Hat Orphan Brotherhood, the stunt team that did that for us. We shot their elements separately, and then in the 9-day shoot, we filmed Tom Peck, our King Edmund, our evil king, and all of the members of the royal court, and then put them all together in post. So it was basically just gathering the pieces that we needed over those 30 days. It wasn't like we would shoot something in a day and it would be everything, all inclusive. It was just gathering the individual layers that we would need for each shot.
And how did you keep continuity, or did that even like come to mind, or how did that?
We had to plan like the angle of every shot. Everything got storyboarded, and pretty much everything got put into animatics, which was like time to the music and Dad's narration. And you can see some of that stuff on our Instagram. That really helped to be able to figure out like, okay, this is going to be our eye line for everybody in the background, because this is where Margaret was in the room fighting the guards. So like we need them looking, sort of center frame, and they're just reacting to something that's not there. And I'll just be like off camera holding some kind of a marker for them to look at and react to. Or I'll just be, next to the camera acting it out myself. So, yeah, that's how we did. The eye lines were probably the toughest thing, but like when you see some of the bigger crowd scenes, I don't want to spoil anything, but towards the end there's like a big crowd scene, and the easiest thing for that was just to have everybody looking in the same direction. That definitely helped.
How did you learn all this? Because green screen is pretty like tough to.
I don't know. I've studied VFX techniques for a long time. I was obsessed with like collecting DVDs as a kid and my whole life, and my collection is very much out of hand at this point. And the beautiful thing about, home video, which I think we've lost in the age of streaming, is all the special features. You learn so much from commentary and behind the scenes featurettes. So that's really where I learned a lot of these techniques. And a lot of the stuff that we did on Margaret, I had never done before, but I knew that it was possible. So that was enough to get me to start, at least.
It kind of reminds me of like Sin City. Like Sin City,
oh my goodness.
It's
Sin
all
City.
green screen and.
Robert Rodriguez, absolutely. I owe so much to that guy. I probably owe like my whole career to that guy, because El Mariachi is certainly one of the things that proved it was possible to do something with a small crew or even by yourself on a low budget and make it watchable. And Sin City was further proof that like you could do an entire movie with green screen compositing. And 300 was another one that I remember like showing like art department and our DP like behind the scenes featurettes from Sin City and 300, just to like give them an idea of like, this is what we're going to be doing. This is how it's going to feel on set. It's probably going to be tough. You just have to kind of trust. And I did as much previs as I could, storyboards and even like reference photos for like what the Great Hall might look like, or the castle, things like that. So
So what was your biggest challenge, because there's so much that went into this?
Biggest challenge, probably just the endurance of compositing all of that stuff myself and sitting at a computer for years. And there would be days where I would just sit down at the computer and cry, because it wasn't that I didn't know what to do. It was just so tedious. And for somebody with ADHD, like that is like, it's like, oh my goodness, it's the worst. I hate editing, even though I think I'm decent at it. It's like, it's a blessing and a curse. So yeah, no, that definitely the endurance part of it was the toughest thing. So yeah.
Wow, that's crazy, man.
Yeah.
So you guys are like going into festivals now. What is your plan with the film and what you got going on next?
Well, we've talked to some people who have kind of put it out there, like they'd be interested in making, a feature version of Margaret. I'm not necessarily in a rush to just jump right back into doing the same thing again.
Yeah.
And especially if it'd be live action, I actually think it could work much better as like a fully animated film, almost like a Pixar style, because then you can give it this sort of uniformity. All the stuff with the dad and the daughter would have this sort of matching feel with the stuff that's in the fairy tale, and then the fairy tale you can actually make bigger than you would have been able to do, say live action. So I don't know. That's a thought. I'm writing another feature. I'm writing what will be my first feature right now, even though it's the 5th feature-length script that I've written. But it's taking elements from all the other ones that I've written so far, and hopefully using the best pieces from each. Because I think it's time. I'm not getting any younger, and I really want to make my feature. I want to be able to say that I have a feature under my belt. So
for sure.
Yeah,
you're definitely on your way there, man. So yeah, what you got going on? Well, the feature. You mentioned a documentary during your mixer.
Yes. So
tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. Well, the last time I tried to make a feature, it didn't happen. I had no support, and I was just trying to do it by myself, and I was very hard on myself. I think the lesson that I've learned over the course of running Desert Cactus has been incremental steps, baby steps. Noose was a $200 production. $250 if you include the pizza. Violent Water was $1,000. Margaret was considerably more. But it's all been building, and it all started small, and it's allowed us to take on bigger and bigger projects as we go along. So I think the mistake back then when I was trying to make a feature was I was just trying to start too big. It was too ambitious. But the documentary was sort of born out of camera tests. We were living in Desert Cactus apartments, and I would use my neighbors as stand-ins for camera tests. It was a small complex, 8 units, and everybody else there was elderly, living off of Medicaid, and estranged from their families. It was very interesting to kind of live there because we sort of became surrogate kids for these people. And they were just so willing to help and so friendly and so caring, and we all kind of looked out for each other. But I was using the neighbors for camera tests, and then it just kind of dawned on me, there's a story here. Downtown was going through a lot of changes at the time. We moved into Desert Cactus in 2013 and lived there till 2017. So those really were the Tony Hsieh years, in Downtown Project. So it was right there. It was 10th and Fremont, essentially. And so that whole neighborhood was going through a ton of changes at the time. And it just made sense to interview the neighbors, kind of get their backstories, how they ended up in Vegas, what their lives were like, what they were going through, and then to, sort of juxtapose it with all the changes that were happening downtown, the changing landscape of the neighborhood, the gentrification, essentially, of that area. Mm-hmm. And so none of them live there anymore. Desert Cactus has since been bought and is under new management and twice as expensive.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So the complex is still there?
It's still there.
Wow, that's crazy.
And they kept the name. They kept the name Desert Cactus because of us, because I think they were going to rename it the Betty or something. Okay. Betty, I forget her last name, but she designed the Welcome to Las Vegas sign. Oh. So they were trying to keep it with, a historical sort of meaning there. But yeah, and I got Desert Cactus tattooed on me. So when the new owner saw that, he was like, "Oh, okay, it's got some value then, I guess." Right, so they kept the name Desert Cactus. So
wow, that's crazy. It's an interesting way to come up with your production name.
Thanks.
So let me ask you about the ADHD stuff. Yeah. How do you how does it affect you now? And then with being a director, how do you deal with that?
It affects me every day. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. You know, some people say ADHD is a superpower. I respectfully disagree. Point in case, Margaret took 5 years to finish. And it's not, I don't blame that solely on my ADHD. Obviously, I was primarily doing a lot of the post-production myself, but even so, it makes me a perfectionist, which is not always useful. It makes it very hard to switch tasks, which is great for, like sort of marathon work, like where if you can get hyper fixated on something, some aspect of the production, like, ooh, now I get to make a miniature clothesline with tiny little shirts and pants and overalls, then you can just kind of dive into that, and you will just be riding that high for as long as it lasts, and you'll have a cool little piece of a miniature at the end of it that you can shoot and film. And so that's where you can really get into a flow and actually make, ADHD work for you is by allowing yourself to be able to jump from thing to thing as your attention, requires. And Margaret was certainly that kind of a project where it required so many different things that, that I could turn my attention to random aspects of the production as they sort of piqued my interest. But then there were other things that, I couldn't do myself, like the horse puppet. We had to outsource that, and that took a long time to find the right person for that. We had a person who made the horse puppet. We had somebody who animated it. And so, outside of that was great that Rachel could sort of coordinate that stuff. She was very good at just balancing all of this stuff with these people overseas. Our puppet maker was in Hungary. Our animator was in the UK. Wow. Our composer was in LA. Our map painter was in Mumbai. It was in some ways it was an international production on top of just being, a lot of people in Vegas. So,
yeah. Wow. So being on set, does it affect you? Do you get distracted? Is that a distraction thing, or is it just?
No, I'm at my best on set.
Okay.
In fact, I wish I was on set more. That's why I know I need to do this. Whatever I can do to end up doing this for a living, I want to be on set. I'm at my best when I'm working. And when I don't, I spiral. I can't not be creating. I have to be working on something. I have to have some kind of external thing to put my energy into. Otherwise, it just all goes inward, and it just drives me crazy. So.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, not cool. That's crazy. What is your you're doing the festivals? You have Nevada Women's Film Festival coming up soon.
Yeah.
Just let us know before we wrap up what else you got.
Yeah, Nevada Women's Film Festival. We're going to be screening June 19th. I want to say the screening starts at 7:45 is when our block is happening. Definitely come and see that. That's going to be at UNLV in the FDH building. Very excited about that. There's some other festivals that we've heard about that we can't announce yet. And then stay tuned because I'm going to be casting hopefully by the end of the year for this feature. I'm in the process of writing right now. I've been doing that all week. Even this morning, I was really trying to get some good hours in, just working on the outline. I'm still in that part of the process. I don't just go straight to putting it in the script format. Some people do note cards. I kind of did note cards at first, but then that became sort of doing an outline, bullet points. And then as you keep adding bullet points, then some of the bullet points end up having little bits of dialogue that get added to them because you're like, oh, you need that line in this scene. And so now it's getting dialogue in there, and pretty soon I will have to, put it into a script format. So, anybody out there who wants to hopefully collaborate and help on this feature, I'm going to need it. So
that's awesome, bro.
Yeah.
And your Instagram has a lot of your behind the scenes stuff that you guys have been posting. It's really cool to see the BTS stuff and how you were able to create this movie. So stay tuned and go check it out. And thank you for being on the podcast, bro.
Hey, thank you.
We'll see you next time. Peace.
Yeah.